Welcome back to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes, where I teach you how to make easy and delicious recipes to share with the ones that you love. And today I'm going to teach you how to make chicken turnovers. It is one of my favorite things to make because you can make big, huge batches of them, freeze them, and then bake them as you need them. I usually make these with puff pastry, but we're going through a worldwide stay-at-home order, so I only had one container of puff pastry in my freezer, and I'm trying to limit my grocery trips these days, so I'm just going to use that container of puff pastry, box of puff pastry with 2 sheets in it. And I'm also going to make a batch of homemade Kourou dough. Kourou dough is very tender and flavorful, and it consists of just a few ingredients: yogurt, flour, olive oil, and some salt and lemon juice. A pinch of sugar too is in there, but we'll go over those ingredients later. It's so yummy. You can use any dough that you have on hand. Any pie crust will do. The filling is so delicious. I'm using chicken breast because that's what I have, but you can use boneless chicken thigh meat. Perfect. Let's begin by making the filling. So I have a cast iron skillet heating over medium heat. To that, I'm going to add 1 onion that I finely chopped with about 1/3 cup of olive oil. Since we're using chicken breast, we need a little bit more fat in this. And then I'm also going to season it with a little bit of salt and let it cook over medium heat until the onions are soft and golden. While the onions are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and thinly slice the 2 chicken breasts I have into strips, and then I'm going to cut each strip into little pieces as small as possible so that way they cook evenly. Next, I'm going to grate the garlic cloves, and I'm going to add them to the onions as soon as they're nice and golden, and just warm them through over medium heat for about 20 seconds or so. That's all it takes. Next, I'm going to add the chicken to the pan, and I'm also going to season it with a little bit of salt, some black pepper, a pinch of crushed red pepper flakes for heat. If you don't like it, leave it out. I always put a little bit more than a pinch because I do love it a little bit on the spicier side. And then I'm going to give it a mix and let it cook for about 5 minutes over medium heat. Then I'm going to go in and kick the flavor up a notch with a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to put about a teaspoon or so, or 4 or 5 little drops of it. That should be good. Give it a nice mix. Then I'm going to add a can of diced tomatoes that I've pureed, and I'm going to let it cook over medium heat until the sauce gets nice and thick and the chicken is fully cooked. That should take about 10 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes max. Then go ahead and finely chop some fresh parsley, sprinkle it on top. Taste the sauce, taste the chicken also. You also want to break it up a little bit with a wooden spatula to get the chicken as small as possible. Taste it, and if it needs more seasoning, this is the time you can season it. A little bit of more salt, pepper. If it's a little bit acidic, you could add a ½ teaspoon of sugar in it. Give it a nice mix and set it aside to cool completely. That would be amazing over pasta, over rice, or with a salad. But we're going to use it to stuff it into the pastry. So now let's start with making the Kourou dough. So we have wet ingredients and dry ingredients. Let's begin with the dry ingredients. So for the dry ingredients, we have some all-purpose flour, a little bit of salt, and sugar. You want to whisk your dry ingredients first so that way you use 1 whisk for everything. Whisk them all together. Set them aside. Now for the wet ingredients, I have some olive oil, some Greek yogurt, an egg, and we're just going to need a little bit of lemon juice, just about a tablespoon or so. Helps it become extra tender. We're just going to whisk this all together until it's combined and smooth. And now we're going to add a little bit of the flour at a time. And now that it's getting too thick to whisk, I'm going to use my hands, and I'm going to incorporate the rest of the flour just until everything is combined. Be careful not to overmix so that way you end up with a really nice and light and tender dough. You don't get a really tough one. Once everything is incorporated and the dough is ready, just pour a little bit of olive oil and pat the dough on top with your hands. Cover with a clean kitchen towel or some plastic wrap and set it aside to rest for about 15 minutes or so. In the meantime, we're going to prepare the puff pastry. So you want to make sure that the puff pastry is thawed properly. If you know you're making this ahead of time, you could put it in your refrigerator overnight and then it's going to be ready to work with. You can also leave it at room temperature for about an hour. That would work too. So I'm going to lightly flour my board with a little bit of all-purpose flour. And I'm going to open one sheet at a time. And I'm just going to roll it out about 1 inch on each side. And then I'm going to make mini turnovers with the puff pastry. So I'm going to cut it into 3 strips. And then I'm going to cut each strip into 3 pieces, as equal as possible. These don't have to be perfect. And I'm going to place these on the baking tray while I roll out the other sheet of puff pastry and cut it into 9 pieces. Now it's time to fill the little portions of puff pastry. It is a good idea to go in and mash up the chicken a little bit more. You could do it with a spoon or with your fingers because it's going to be much easier to spoon it into the center. Put a teaspoon of the filling into the center. Try not to overfill it. And then brush the edges with either egg wash or with water. Fold over the puff pastry and seal it. Press it down so that way it seals. And then you want to take a fork once you finish filling all of them and make little decorative edges around the 3 sides of the puff pastry. Put them on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. Now we're going to make a little bit of egg wash that's going to give beautiful color to the tops. All you need are 2 egg yolks with 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk. You could use water instead. Brush the tops with the egg wash, and then with the fork, go ahead and pierce some holes on top so that way when they're cooking, the steam will escape. At this point, you want to put them in the freezer and chill them for about 15 minutes because then they'll puff up and be much more flakier once they bake in the oven. You can heat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit in the meanwhile. If you don't have room in your freezer, definitely you can chill them in the refrigerator. In the refrigerator, you would probably have to chill them for about 25 minutes or so. At this point, you could either bake them all or you can freeze them. So if you're going to freeze them for later use, they stay fresh for 3-4 months in the freezer. Make sure that you chill them until they're nice and solid and hard. Transfer them into freezer-safe containers or freezer-safe bags, and then you can just bake them off as you need them. Bake them in a preheated 350-degree oven until they're nice and golden and puffy all around. I'm going to show you what they look like once they're done. So go ahead and prepare your work surface by drizzling a little bit of olive oil on the top. This is going to help the dough roll out easily. Spread it all around. Cut the dough into 2 equal portions. And then cut each portion into 8 portions. So cut each one in half, and then each one of those into 4 pieces. Try to get them as even as possible. And then roll the portions up into balls. Then we're going to roll each ball out into a 5-inch round. So you can get something that's about 5 inches in diameter so you can keep as a reference. I have this bowl over here. It's a little bit bigger than 5 inches. Then you're going to get a heaping spoonful of the filling. These get filled with much more than the little mini puff pastry ones do because there's much more space. And then you're going to put it in the center, fold it over, press the sides down, and then with a fork you could go ahead and press down so that way you can make a little decorative edge. Carefully pick it up and put it on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. That looks good. Take a spoonful of the filling and put it in the center. And I also have some feta cheese, so I'm just going to crumble some feta cheese in this one. I'm actually going to put feta cheese in all of the rest of them. You can put some frozen vegetables in here. Just make sure to thaw them out first and drain them. Green peas would be great. If you don't have feta cheese or if you don't like it, you can leave them plain as is, or you can put some cream cheese in here. Soften some cream cheese and just put a few dollops of cream cheese in here. That would work great. Some mozzarella cheese would be fine. You could put some shredded mozzarella or some little cubes of it or whatever your favorite cheese is. Fold it over, press down. With the tines of the fork, create a decorative pattern all around the edges. place the turnovers on a baking tray, brush the tops with some egg wash, poke some holes on top so that way the steam escapes with the tines of a fork, and then bake them in the middle rack of a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 minutes or until they're beautifully golden all around. So my turnovers are all ready. They baked in the oven for basically the same amount of time. They take about 30-35 minutes to be done, but each oven varies. And keep in mind, the more trays you bake, the longer they're gonna take to cook because you're opening and closing your oven more often. So if you're baking all of them all together on the same day, they might take the second and third tray after that will take maybe about 45 minutes to bake. So keep that in mind. You're looking for color when they're beautifully golden all around. The puff pastry ones are going to be puffy. Then you take them out and let them cool down a little bit. These are best served warm. They also taste good at room temperature. I'm going to go in and give them a taste because it smells incredible in here. I'm going to try the puff pastry ones first. So good. The puff pastry is flaky. The chicken with the sauce has so much flavor. Of course, like I said, you can throw some vegetables in here if you want to, some cream cheese or even feta cheese. These are delicious. Now it is time to take a bite of the ones with the homemade Kourou dough. Ooh, and look at this. This has feta cheese in it. Oh my God. If I had to choose between the two, hands down, the Kourou dough is my favorite, especially with the feta cheese in there. The pastry is so tender and flaky. It's perfectly crisp on the outside, but yet it falls apart in your mouth. It's so good. The filling is absolutely amazing, especially with the feta cheese. I hope you guys give these a try and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I hope you make these for the special people in your life and that they love you even more for it. Thank you all for spending time with me today. I will see you all next time. Yes,